Hi. Today we have Beth Manley from the Federal Mint Credit Union going to talk to us about budgeting for life. Thank you, and Beth, take it away.
Welcome. I'm going to try and speak up. I've got a bit of a cold, so I'm a little congested here. Welcome, everyone. If you have questions about anything that we're talking about, please feel free to chime in. It's kind of a casual atmosphere here. My contact information is in the presentation materials. So if you have a question that you aren't comfortable asking in front of the group, feel free to email me. I usually get back to you within 24 hours or less. Just to let you know a little bit about me and about my organization, my name is Beth Manley. I am the Adult Financial Education Manager for Franklin Mint Federal Credit Union. So we are unique in that, well, first of all, credit unions are unique in that we're non-for-profit, which is significant. So we do everything that a bank does, but because we're non-for-profit, our fees are lower. Sometimes we don't have fees for similar products. We offer all the same products. And then over and above what we need to maintain a reasonable amount of growth, that money gets reinvested into our communities in significant ways. We have chosen to really go with education, financial education. So we're in 23 different school districts with a K-12 program that is very strongly associated and in line with the current work readiness programs that they're working for through the state of Pennsylvania, which has been really great for us because we have all the work done for the schools and now they have to comply with this, so they're very happy. I handle our adult program, so anyone who's 18 and up. I go to a variety of schools, including Drexel, Swarthmore. I'm going to be at Widener on Monday, and then also our partner groups. There are a dozen of us. We're all educators. I have about 24 years background working in finance. So if you want to know about credit, car loans, mortgages, home loans, those kinds of things, I am the person to talk to. I have a wealth of information combined with a training background and an education background. So it kind of puts me in a perfect spot for this job. So we have a location on campus. If you have more questions about membership, about what we offer, what we do, because we do it all. Dan Canamuso, who's here in the room with me, he is the manager of the branch on campus at 3200 Chestnut. He's more than happy to answer any questions, and we also have complete online banking, and you can check out our website and see what we have. So let's get into. Thought it was a little cheeky to do a Halloween theme for our intro slide. This is pretty much the only thing we're doing as far as Halloween goes, but budgeting, it's a matter of life or debt. Oh. All right. So we're going to talk about budgeting today. We're going to talk about it in the big sense and in the small sense. We're going to talk about goal setting with our finances, and a lot of this translates to other parts of our lives, so it's kind of a bit universal. So budgeting is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. Oftentimes we think we don't have enough money, but it's a matter of we're just not paying attention to what's going on with our money. So we're going to talk about the benefits of budgeting, why we struggle to budget, making financial choices and decisions, needs versus wants, which is something that you will struggle with when you are 5 and you will struggle with when you are 55. Defining realistic financial goals, and being financially healthy. And we're going to go into some detail about what it means to be financially healthy and how to measure your financial health. So simply put, a budget is a plan. Fail to plan, plan to fail. So if you find yourself spending more money than you make, spending uncontrollably or impulse buying, charging items instead of saving for them, or thinking about having an emergency fund but struggling to do it, then you probably do not have a plan yet. So what we're getting down to is the difference between financial freedom and spending freedom. So spending freedom is that instant gratification. It's doing the loop at Target. Does anybody else here like to shop at Target like I do? So the going in for light bulbs and spending $100. That's the instant gratification, the no plan. Emergencies are potentially devastating because while you were spending that $100 and you get a flat tire, now the $100 that you spent at Target should have gone towards that flat tire. With financial freedom, we're talking about prioritizing for the future. We're having a plan for our finances, rewarding ourselves for achieving financial goals. And I can't stress that enough, that you have to set your goals and you have to give yourself an incentive beyond the goal itself to meet them. Building wealth and stability and preparing for emergencies. So why do we do it? Why do we spend money that we don't have on things we don't need? I come from a family of complete opposites. So I can go and I can blame all my habits on my parents, but I'm a grown adult and I can move past what I have learned improperly from my family. My mother was a spender, she was an impulse buyer, and my dad was a chronic saver. So it would be scenarios like mom would go shopping, hide the bags in the trunk of the car, wait till dad went to sleep, and then bring them up and hide them in the closet so that dad didn't know what was going on. So you can imagine that this caused a lot of stress, and it's no surprise that finances are one of the top 2 reasons that most couples get divorced. So when we're going through this program and talking about budgeting, keep that in mind in your own personal relationships. That if you are with somebody or if you find somebody, make sure that you have the difficult conversations about money, just like you have them about all the other parts of your lives before you commit to someone. Because money can be the killer. Money can cause the most stress, and money can break you up if you're not on the same page and moving in the same direction with that goal. Family influences, friends, cultural influences, we can't discount those when we talk about why we do what we do. You know, in some cultures, it's very important to have very lavish weddings. So you might live very modestly for most of the time, but then you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a wedding because that's what you have to do, or you feel that you have to do that. So just be aware. Are these things that are important to you, or are these things that you're feeling pressured to do because of outside influences? And in the long run, is that really what you want? Because you're the one who has to live your life. So we talked about it not just being about having enough money. 60% of NBA players go broke within 5 years of departing the league. NFL players aren't much better. 78% are experiencing financial stress, not necessarily bankruptcy, but financial stress. These are individuals who within 1 year are making more than most of us are going to make in our lifetime. Because there's not enough financial education. The NFL is getting better with that, where they're sitting down with new players and they're having these conversations, but you still need to plan for the future. So let's get into it. To break it down, a budget is just understanding all of your sources of income, all of your expenses, and having a plan for savings and setting goals. That's the basic components of it. The reason I have this up here is because a lot of times we forget all the little things that are going in and out. And we might keep track of a few things here and there. Back when I first started out on my own, I had a planner. And I didn't make enough money from one paycheck, I was paid weekly, to cover my rent. So I had a breakdown of all the little bills that I had, that I knew I was obligated to pay. And I knew exactly how much from each paycheck had to go towards that. It was a very primitive budget because basically the idea was I paid everything I had to pay, wasn't saving anything, and anything that was left over was mine to have fun with. So that was my idea of budgeting when I was in my early 20s. Budgeting doesn't happen overnight. You have to start out keeping track of everything. So I say don't even go into this with the idea that you're going to budget from day one. Start gathering your receipts. Start keeping track of all the things that you're spending money on. Some of us have the habit of, you know, we go grocery shopping or we go to the ATM after we get paid and we take out some petty cash, maybe 30, 40, 50, maybe $100. And that's your throwing around money for when you go out at night or for the little things that you want to spend cash on. Well, we tend to lose track of what we're spending that money on. And it can add up very quickly to a significant amount of money. And I have some charts to show you exactly how quickly it can add up. So record everything that you're spending money on for the next 30 days. So every penny, keep it in a pouch, keep it in an envelope, keep the receipts for everything. Write it down. If you're spending cash and you're not getting a receipt, just write it down someplace in one central location. Don't underestimate the power of seeing things in black and white. especially when we talk about goal setting and trying to change behavior, because we tend to be in kind of denial mode when we're not actually looking at things in writing. And for you, in writing, maybe a spreadsheet, that's fine. Whatever method you're going to use to keep track of it, just be consistent and don't miss any of the little tiny purchases that you're making. Even the dollar at Wawa, write it down, because dollars add up very quickly. I have included in your packet a little sample budget. This is just to kind of get your brain going as far as all the little things. One of the problems that we have is that in order to make our lives easier, we tend to automate a lot of our functions. And that's great for positive things like savings. You automate your savings, you automate your retirement, all those kinds of things. So the money automatically goes where you want it to go. The problem is that when it's being pulled out of your account and you're not paying attention to it, we lose track. So make sure you're looking at your bank statement for things like Netflix, gym memberships, anything that you automatically have going out, and that you're accounting for that with every single month statement. You'd be surprised how many people forget that they have something happening, and it's a small enough amount that it's not really throwing them out of budget, but they realize at the end of the year that they've spent $100, $200, maybe $300 on something that they're not even utilizing anymore. Then there are the things that are periodical expenses, like maybe you don't pay your car insurance every month. Maybe that's something that you're paying quarterly, or you're paying semi-annually or annually, or however you pay it. Something that doesn't happen with every paycheck or with every month. This is a real problem for people who have their mortgages paid off and they forget about their taxes. So when you have a mortgage, you may or may not know this, typically your mortgage company has your taxes escrowed, meaning that with every mortgage payment that you make, a portion of your taxes are being taken also, so that when that big several $1,000 tax bill comes due once a year, the money's waiting. Well, if you don't account for that when you've paid off your mortgage, you end up having to take a loan for that, or worse, you get in arrears for your taxes. These are the things that you have to make sure that you're taking into account. So that's why I say you can't budget overnight. You can't necessarily even budget during the course of a month, but you can start the process. So there are some different things in here that are kind of memory joggers, so that you say, oh yeah, I do pay for that. Oh yeah, that is something that I do. So once we, yes, go ahead.
I have a question about the periodical. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to create a budget for our family, and there are many periodical things, like just say something that only happens in the summer, like camp, or
yes.
a pool, or something like that. So do you create one spreadsheet for each month?
What I do is I figure out the cost, because it's so, when you can break down a bill into bite-sized chunks, it's so much easier to digest.
Okay.
So what I do is, I'll give you an example of Shore House. Shore House is like $2,000,
Right.
and it's due in 3 payments.
Okay.
The earlier I start saving for that Shore House, the more comfortable it is to have to pay that $2,000. So I'll start, as soon as I'm done with paying for it, like when we've done our shore vacation, I break it out into, it ends up being, gosh, what is it? I don't even remember what it is, but I break it out into paychecks. So I'm paid 26 times a year. So I have to roll back a couple paychecks because of when the payments are due. But I figure out how much I need to have per paycheck broken out. So if you know you need, let's say you need $5,000 for the summer months for camp.
Okay.
Figure out the amount of time that you have to save that money and break it out into how many paychecks you get. That's the easiest way to do it, because if you just say, okay, I'm going to have these 3 months and I'm going to put this money aside, then you might be scrambling from another area, or you might have bills that are overlapping that you haven't accounted for.
So how do you account for that on an Excel?
You just break it out into every paycheck. So the easiest way to do it is every paycheck. So if I have to put aside, I have to put aside $75 every paycheck to have that money available. Because if it's something that happens every year like that, then you know it's an ongoing expense and you always want to have that money available.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I find is the easiest way to do it. I also, and this is something kind of unique to us, as a credit union, we don't charge for our savings accounts. So I have a lot of savings accounts. And because they're not all attached to my debit card, so there's less temptation for me to spend that money. So we also have club accounts. So for the holidays, starting in January, I put aside $50 every single paycheck. That goes towards the holidays. And then usually towards the middle of the year, I start ramping that up because I can then use that money. If I have a little bit extra in there, I'll use it towards other things like holiday parties that we throw, not just the holiday gifts, things that might pop up. But it's like my holiday account, but I always have money going into that and I can't touch it. It's separate. And I have a separate account, so we have, I'm talking a lot about myself, I do apologize.
No, it's good.
So my son swims, and it's very expensive to be on the swim team. So I know that $45 from every single paycheck during swim season goes into that special account. And this is where I talked about automating things. It literally automatically, when my paycheck hits, it goes out, it goes into the special savings account, and then at the first of the month when that's due, the $90 goes and sweeps back into my checking account for when that bill is done, so that the money is always available. And this is stuff you can do with online banking. I love online banking. It just, if I know I have something that I have to save for, I set myself a goal, and then I think you can do this with most online bankings. You can have the swipe labeled. So when that money comes out of my account and goes into the special savings account, it's labeled swim. It's labeled that it's for this hobby, it's for that hobby, different things. I find that the only way for me to be organized is to be overly organized with things. It just to kind of overcompensate so that I'm not caught off guard. Because when you have, especially when you have a family, when you go to school full time, when you're working full time, you've got all these balls in the air. You don't want to drop anything, especially something that's important as paying a bill and having it available. So that's how I do it. I automate everything, all the good stuff. And I don't have any of my bills automated. I control that. And one of the other things, and we'll talk about this also, is I pay all my bills biweekly. So I'm paid biweekly, I pay my bills biweekly. So if a credit card is $200 a month to pay, then I pay $100 every paycheck. So that I'm always ahead of the game, I'm always paying it off quicker than it's required to be paid. And I did that with my car payment. We're going to talk about financing a car, but I'm very proud of the fact that I followed the rules, I did everything right, and I paid my car off in a very short period of time. And this is the first time in a very long time that I have not had a car payment, but I have a relatively new car. But I digress. Let's get back to needs and wants. So this is probably one of the hardest things to differentiate between needs and wants, because technically internet access and cable TV, that is a want and not a need. My son will argue with you on that. My husband will argue with you on that. But a lot of times when people are in very dire financial situations, credit counselors will sit down with them and say, hey, get rid of X, Y, and Z, and you can pay your bills. You're just really not managing within your means. My brother, so as financially dysfunctional as my family was, my husband's family was just the opposite. They're all very goal-oriented, very driven, very savings-oriented. His brother is he's saved quite a bit, but he's also paying for cash for his daughter's 4-year degree, has never, ever had cable. Never had cable. Would go rent movies from the library for free for the longest time. And, we would all tease him about it, but, that's back in the day, that was still $100 and some odd a month that he was saving, which you put that into a 529 account when your child is young, and that adds up very quickly. He has a side business. He goes to swap meets and he sells stuff on eBay, makes thousands of dollars a year from his home. And that's just on the side. He has a great job also, but they don't go into debt. They live very comfortably. They go on nice family vacations. It's because these are the compromises that he's willing to make to live this life that he has chosen. And really, that's what it comes down to with the needs versus wants is, what is important to you? Can you live without this for 6 months? Okay, great. Can you save up the money instead of charging it or going into some other form of debt? What are the compromises that you're going to have to make for this choice? You know, if I want to buy that really snazzy handbag, great. Am I now going to miss out on going on a vacation because I've just blown the cash that I had on something else? Maybe something that in the long run is going to be less meaningful for me. We talk about money. Money is deep. Money has a lot of different connections to us. There's an entire form of science called behavioral economics. And one of the foundations of behavioral economics is the fact that we do not make logical decisions when it comes to money. No matter how much information we have, let's stand up here and preach about budgeting as much as until I go blue in the face. It all comes down to what we are comfortable and what we really want to put into practice. And it's a difficult habit to establish. You know, I still fight my old habits. I've had to change a lot of things. I don't do the lap at Target every week anymore. I either go and take my list and buy exactly what I need online and have it ready for me, or I buy it online because there's less temptation for me to have those impulse buys because I know what my shortcomings are. I can be impulsive, so I have to remove the temptation of the impulse. Otherwise, I'm going to end up having a lot of wants and not be able to satisfy my needs. So this is where it comes down to what do you value? What's important to you? If we get ourselves into debt, on one hand, and on the other hand, we're saying that our family is important to us and spending time with them is important, but we don't get to do that because we've run up this debt and we now have to work 2 jobs or work overtime. There's a disconnect between what we say we want and the behaviors that we're engaging. And that's really where budgeting can help us to take stock of the behaviors. Because like so many things, I always liken it to health goals. So I have been on a healthy path and I have used the budgeting techniques to get on a healthy path. I'm documenting everything, writing it down, I'm setting health goals. And the things that have worked for my finances have also worked for my personal health. So this is very universal. And that's when we talk about goal setting. So you have to define your goals, identify your priorities, loop back to those values. What's really important to you? Is it important to you to look like you're wealthy? Or is it important to you to be able to retire at age 70? Because that is a real decision that a lot of people are making, that they would rather look snazzy now, and they're just going to work until they're dead. And if you make bad choices when you're younger, that is really what's going to happen. This goal setting is universal. So we can't just say, I'm going to save money. You say, I'm going to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So I'm going to save $500. So that's specific and it's measurable. I know if I have $500. It's attainable. Based on my budget, that's attainable. Based on what I make. It's relevant. I'm going to save the money for holiday gifts for my coworkers. That's pretty generous, $500. And I'm going to do it by November. And I'm going to do it by putting aside X number of dollars with each paycheck from January to November. And that's how I'm going to do it. It's a very realistic goal. And that's why I was saying, you know, when you were talking about something that comes up once a year or twice a year, holiday savings are one of those things where I never feel like I'm saving enough. So every year I keep upping that goal, upping that goal, upping that goal, because something always comes up that time of the year. But it's not a complete unknown. It's something that I can budget for at least about 80% of the time. And I know it's going to happen, and shame on me if I'm caught completely surprised by it, because I can start in January and I can put aside a relatively painless amount of money, and I can even start ramping that up as other expenses go away during the course of the year. But you can do this with anything. You know, if you want to save for a house, you know, figure out exactly what you can save for it, start putting that money aside, and plan. It's not an unrealistic goal for most people. What ends up happening is that we don't realize all the leaks that we have in our budget. Your financial goals can't all be retirement. It's nice to save for retirement. We all have to save for retirement. But you need to have short-term goals, mid-term goals, and long-term goals. Because we get very frustrated when we don't see enough progress. That's why, as I liken it to a health goal, all of those programs, whether it's Weight Watchers or Jenny Craig, they all have those quick start programs. It's because we need that little encouragement right at the beginning. So that's why it's really nice to have these short-term goals. Have something that's maybe 6 months, no more than a year. Maybe it's saving for vacation. Maybe it's saving for a couch. Maybe you have an apartment and you want a nice piece of furniture for it. Put the goal in place and save for it. Reward yourself when you get there. Your midterm goals can be saving for a car, saving for a home, saving for your education, your children's education, and then of course the long-term goal of retirement. This is where the little leaks come in. So I was working at one of our hospital branches, and I talk about the Target, my doing the loop at Target. What I didn't realize was they had a cafeteria at the hospital, and I had gotten into the habit of getting coffee every day at the hospital, and probably 4 times a week getting lunch. And I was wondering, I'm like, I'm paying all my bills, there's no problem there. This was before I really started to track my spending. This was probably about 6 years ago. I was wondering why I wasn't able to save as much money as I should based on how much money I was making. And that's when I started to look at our online banking, because we had these charts that you could pull up from your card activity. And I had personal spending was like 75% of my monthly budget. I'm like, what the heck am I spending my money on? This is what I was spending my money on. So something as inexpensive as bottled water, so $1.50, which is about what I was spending on coffee. If you do that every day over the course of the year, you're spending almost $550 on coffee. Cigarettes, if you need no other reason to quit smoking, and $7, that's the average cost across the country. In Philadelphia, it's much higher than that. $2,500. I know a lot of things I could spend $2,500 on besides cigarettes. You may not be doing all of these habits every single day, but if you're not aware of what you're doing, and this is where a lot of those apps come into play. So does anybody here use the Starbucks app?
Yes.
The Starbucks app is a really great way to spend a lot of money at Starbucks because it encourages you to use the app. You're not spending cash. You're loading it up onto your app through the card, so you're not really paying attention to it. The next thing you know, you've spent $150 over the course of a month at Starbucks. And you're like, where did this money go? And we see a lot of different merchants are going that way, that they're encouraging you to load money up onto a card as opposed to having it constantly sweep out of your account where you're always thinking about it or paying cash with it. They incentivize this behavior because it helps them, it hurts you. So if you're responsible enough to say, I have $25 or whatever, however much money you want to spend at Starbucks per month. If you're responsible enough to say, I'm going to load this up on my card, I have budgeted for this amount, and when I get to 0, I'm done for the month, great. But if you're not, then maybe it's time to take a step back from that. It's hard to break those habits, but it's like me with my Target habit. I don't go to Target anywhere near as much as I used to. I probably don't even go there once a month anymore because I noticed those behaviors that I was engaging in, and it was not helping my budgeting in any way, shape, or form. But lunch, I mean, $7.40, that's cheap. I mean, that's like a Chick-fil-A lunch around here. Probably spending more like $12 pop on lunch. If you're doing it every day, $2,700. It's a lot of money. So I put this goal together. So when I was doing this for Swarthmore University, I wanted something they could relate to. So this was $38.12 a week. So average Uber is about $12 to $13. Average beer, domestic beer at a bar, probably not in Philadelphia, is $5. An average dinner at like a mid-price place with no alcohol is about $26. So how many of those things are you doing on a regular basis? Going to the movies, $12, $15 a ticket. This is for 2 people to go on vacation. And I did my research, it's not a terrible place, it's a very nice hotel. All inclusive, 4 days, includes a round trip nonstop flight from Philadelphia. So as little as $38.12 a week being put aside could mean the difference between you being able to enjoy a vacation and not enjoying a vacation. This is where those mindful habits come in. And with budgeting, that's what it's about. It's about mindfulness versus mindlessness. And so many of the things that we do, if we are more mindful in the way we behave, we can save ourselves a lot of headaches down the road. So what does a healthy, balanced budget look like? You know, we can talk about, we don't operate in a vacuum. I mean, we're already living our lives. We're already spending our money. We already have our income, or we're dealing with our lives. But if we're starting from zero, we can make a fresh start and see what things should look like ideally. Elizabeth Warren was one of the first people to really promote this idea of the budgeting guidelines. So this is a breakdown of your net, your take-home pay. And the idea behind this is that you don't get in over your head in any one area. What ends up happening is that sometimes we find a really great apartment that we absolutely love, and we're like, I can figure out how I can afford this. I'll get a roommate, I'll do this, I'll do that. I really want to live here. Or we buy too much house. Especially when you're shopping for a house, you tend to get qualified for a lot more than realistically you want to be spending on a house. So many of the needs, like housing and car, they have other expenses associated with them that we don't take into consideration. We're not looking at the big picture. So if you buy a house because you feel you can afford the mortgage payment and the taxes, you're okay. It's a stretch, but it's okay. Are you taking into account the fact that a larger house is also going to have more expensive utility bills? How is that going to impact you? The maintenance on the house is going to be much more expensive. You're going to have a lot more. If you have a bigger yard, you've got to deal with all that. So again, those are things. Cars, we're going to talk specifically about cars. We tend to fit the payment into our budget instead of looking at our overall budget and finding the product that actually works for us in the long run. So 50% of your legitimate needs, so we're not talking cable, cable's a want, your needs, basic groceries, basic housing, basic utilities, your health insurance, your basic transportation, and that can mean whatever you need it to mean. If you live in the city and you don't want a car, great. Then you can spend more money on other things. And then minimum debt obligations, and that's anything you're contractually obligated to pay. So this would be your taxes, this would be if you have student loans, your minimum student loan payments. And then 20%, and again, we're talking your net, your take home, 20% should be split between your savings, and specifically savings for retirement and your emergency funds and education, things like that, kind of the basic important stuff. And then the other part of that 20% goes towards additional debt servicing, so paying more than the minimum, if you do have debt, getting out of that. So if you don't have debt, then that's more money you can put towards saving for retirement. And then 30% goes towards your wants. So this would be saving for vacation, shopping for fun, as opposed to getting the basic necessities, going out to eat, hobbies, things like that. So what I did was, I wanted to see what this looked like in practice. I took a couple, because it's always easier to deal with 2 paychecks. The couple is living in Philadelphia, so I've included city wage tax in this because that is not a trivial amount. Together, they're making $90,000 a year, so they're each making $45,000. So we're going to just walk through what a couple of their budget items are going to look through, not their entire budget, but just a couple things. So they are taking home together a little over $5,600 a month. This is take home after taxes. They're not contributing to their 401k yet. We'll talk about that, or 403b, or whatever their retirement plan is. Their needs need to fit into $2,800 and change. Their savings would be about $1,100, and then they have left about almost $1,700 for their wants. Did you have a question?
No.
Okay. So I went online. This is a home that I found, every home in the Drexel footprint, 3-bed, 2-bath, selling price. Now, they would have to have 20% down payment, otherwise they'd have to be looking at a lower selling price in order to make it work in their budget. But with 20% down payment, 30-year fixed rate, that was the rate at the time I was looking, which was a couple weeks ago. These are legit property taxes, homeowners insurance, this is everything. This couple is paying a little over $1,200 a month for their living, for their basic living expenses. So this works for their budget, assuming they don't have a ton of debt already. Well, they need transportation, and we're going to go on a limb and say that they want a car. Because they're living in the city, they could get away with just one car and using public transportation. This couple wants to have a car. So when you're buying a car, we talked about looking at the big picture, not just looking at the payment. This is the auto finance rule. If you're not able to pay cash for your vehicle, because not everybody can spend, cash, it's 20, 48, 10. So it's 20% down, financing for no more than 48 months, and the payment plus car insurance should be no more than 10% of your gross, so your pre-tax income. Well, that seems really conservative. Well, the reasoning behind that is the 20% down in the 48 months. If you're buying, especially a new car, the minute you drive it off the lot, it's worth less than you bought it for. And there are insurance risks with taking on too much debt on a vehicle. If you finance more than the vehicle is worth, and the vehicle gets totaled, you could potentially be on the hook for anything over what your insurance company is going to pay. Or if you're just dragging out the financing for a really long time, what happens if you get 5 years, 6 years into it, and the car breaks down and it's not repairable? You still owe that money to the finance company, and now you have to take that money and finance it onto the next one if you don't have the cash to pay it off. There's a lot of different issues that you can get yourself into if you take on too much auto loan or you finance more than the automobile's worth. And that's where the 48 months of the 20% down come into. The 10% rule. As somebody who worked in auto finance for 14 years, I can tell you that a lot of people try and fit the car they want into their budget. So that's where they drag the financing out to 72 months, 84 months. It ends up being almost 10 years for some of these car loans. It can be ridiculous. And that's where we fall into all these other problems. Well, just like buying too much house, if you buy too much car and you're only focused on that payment, are you paying attention to the maintenance costs on that vehicle? You can buy a $14,000 BMW just as easy as you can buy a $14,000 Ford. I can guarantee you over 5 years that $14,000 Ford is going to probably cost you a whole lot less than that BMW will, because your oil changes are going to be less. Your fuel is going to be significantly less. Are you buying a vehicle that needs premium fuel? So you're getting lower gas mileage and you have to pay more for every gallon that you put in that car. Your insurance is going to be more. Regular maintenance is going to be more. Tires. As somebody whose husband really likes cars, I can tell you tires are very expensive. Very expensive. And if you're not prepared for that expense, it could be a terrible surprise. So I recommend, and I have followed this. The car before the one I had now, I just paid cash for. It was just a nice little used car. It wasn't terribly expensive, lasted me 5 years. It was great. And then I bought my first new car in a long time 4 years ago, just paid it off a couple months ago. I actually had a little bit more than 20% down. So one of the other tips that I give you is, and this is one that I got from my husband, when you're done paying off your car, keep paying the payment. You pay it into a special savings account. He calls it the car fund. And that's where you get your 20% down from. So if you can pay your car off in 4 years and you maybe can keep that car for 8 years, what's having 4 years worth of car payments put into that fund going to do for your down payment? You might not even need to finance for 4 years. You might be able to finance even less than that. And that's such a luxury, and it makes it so much easier when you're making your decisions. It also becomes the fund for if you do keep that car for a very long period of time, it can also become your repair fund if you need to maintain the vehicle. So this is what our couple's car budget looks like. So we talked about the difference between net and gross. So this is their gross income. The gross income is $7,500 a month. So they have $750 a month to stay within budget to work on their car. So that's 2 cars with car insurance if they both want something. So I went online and I found a nice little 2015 certified pre-owned Honda Civic, low miles. Had to add in Philly sales tax because we're dealing with real numbers here. This is what they're 20% down, their amount to finance. That's the current rate that we were offering for that aged vehicle at the credit union. So car insurance, there was a big swing with car insurance. Living in the city, you're probably going to pay more for car insurance. I was able to get a quote of $100 a month for a female college graduate, age 30, with a good driving record. It was $100 a month for this particular car. So we're looking at $375 per month per person for this vehicle, and that fits right into their budget. So this is what this couple's budget looks like. They've got the 2 vehicles at $375 each, $1,200. They have about $800 a month left for their basic groceries, their basic utilities, and their minimum debt obligations. They still have over $1,100 for their debt servicing and their savings, and they still have almost $1,700 to cover the fun stuff. It's a realistic working budget, especially for, a young couple starting out and their homeowners. So, I mean, see what you can do within the means that you have. I believe I've provided in the back there a blank version of this so that you can kind of see where you fall for all the different things that you have going on. And then you can take this and move this back into the budgeting that we were talking about, where you look at all the little things that you're spending money on and see, excuse me, sorry, see where you can tweak it. Are you spending more than 30% on your wants? What's in that wants budget that shouldn't necessarily be there that you can curb and maybe move to your savings, to be saving more for your retirement, your education, things like that? Do you have things in your needs budget that really aren't needs? Are there things there that you can address? You need to have an emergency fund. We talked about this being the number one, the first thing that you should save for when you start doing goal setting. So there's a lot of numbers that are thrown around with this. A lot of people say you have to have $1,000. A lot of times it's 6 months salary, which if you can save 6 months salary, you're in really good shape and you do not need to be here. You need to have 2 emergency funds. And this is one of those things where I love automating my savings, because to get to my emergency fund, this is how I did it. I automated it. I had $50 go into a special savings account until I got my 2 weeks salary together and had that ready. And then I just shut that off, put it aside, and then as things happen, because life happens, you get a flat tire, you need to repair your car, God forbid an appliance goes, you have that emergency fund. The short-term emergency fund should be 2 weeks pay or $1,000, whichever is greater. Get there as quickly as you can comfortably. This might be the time when you look at the little spending that you're doing and maybe shut a little bit of that off to get that emergency fund set up. The long-term emergency fund, this is for big emergencies. This is for job loss or illness, or your spouse has to stop working for a period of time, or your partner has to stop working. It's 3 to 9 months living expenses. And this is why we went back and we talked about what is a need and what is a want. Because if you're in crisis mode, where you're having to live off of your emergency fund, you need to be very clear about what is a need and what is a want and what you can live without. Your savings, the reason we have this 3 to 9 month living expense variance is because a lot of it has to do with your own personal situation. If you are in a hot job market and the last time you were out of work, it was a very short period of time, then maybe you only need those 3 months living expenses to get you over the bridge. Maybe that's all you need. If you're covering for an illness and you have really strong healthcare coverage, and you've got a backup plan together, then again, yeah, maybe that 3 months is fine. If the economy is kind of slow, maybe your skills are not as hot as they used to be if you were out of work for a long period of time before, then maybe you go more towards that 6 to 9 months. Living expenses as your emergency savings, and keep it as your emergency savings. You shouldn't be tapping into your retirement for your emergency savings. You need to be clear on that. you know, if God forbid that comes up, for a lot of people that is an option, but it really should be an absolute last resort to tap into that money because you don't know what the future is going to hold. I love the quote when we talk about saving for things or charging things. So when you use your debit card, you're paying for things with past hours of your life. When you use your credit card, you're paying for things with future hours of your life. And that's really what we talk about when we budget and when we avoid debt. It's planning for now, planning for the future, so that we aren't locked into choices, so that we don't have to do things because we've accumulated this debt, that we have that freedom. Budgeting is not a one-stop shop. It's not do it now and you're done. It's an organic, living, breathing thing. Your life changes, your situation changes, sometimes for the good, sometimes for not so good. So we talked about tracking your bills and your spending for 1 month. So that's where we start. We start by tracking everything. Then we create our preliminary budget. Then we figure out what we can cut out. What's really discretionary spending? What are we wasting money on? Where we could move that money to things that are more important to us. And that's really what it comes down to is know what's important to you. What do you want to be spending your money on? I love to travel. I still love to travel, but I have a family, I have obligations. But when I was single, I lived very modestly. I used to call it my compartment. I had a condo that I owned. It was incredibly small, incredibly cheap, but it enabled me to travel several times a year because I wasn't locked in, I wasn't house poor. I wasn't locked into that. That was the decision that I made. I had other friends who wanted to buy the big house. That wasn't how I wanted to live my life. Decide what's important to you, how you want to live your life, and that's how you set your goals. And again, if you want to have the big house, that's fine. But just understand the sacrifices that you're going to have to make for that. And know what the big picture is going to look like when you make those choices. Set those realistic goals. Monitor your progress on those goals and reward yourself when you hit those goals. Reevaluate your budget, make sure it's in line with your goals, and start the process over again. As things come up, adjust. Make sure, as one of my favorite little tweaks for saving for retirement is get used to your paycheck. If you're fortunate enough to get an increase, like a cost of living increase of like 3% every year, which some of us get, some of us don't get, adjust your retirement savings for that. Don't take it all. Don't go and blow that money. Get used to what you're spending. If you get a 3% raise, maybe increase your retirement savings by 1 or 2%. You'll still see a small increase in your paycheck, but you're going to see a huge increase in your retirement savings, and you're going to be able to reap those rewards when it's time to retire. This is my contact information, bethm@fmfcu.org. If you have any questions, if there's something that we didn't touch on, if there's something that wasn't clear for you, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you in any way I can. If you have specific questions about something that we didn't go into a lot of detail on, reach out to me. I do a lot on student loans, a lot on overcoming debt, things like that, and I can give you some additional information on that. And then this is Dan's contact information, and that is our address at the branch. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
What do you think about apps like Mint?
Yes, I love Mint. Mint is fantastic. In fact, we had a version of Mint for free on our online banking that I was using, and that's where I found out that I was spending far too much money at Target and at the coffee shop. I think Mint's fantastic. The thing that you have, and there's a lot of different apps too. One thing that you need to be aware of is if something is free, you're the product. So if you choose to go with the free Mint app, they are gathering a lot of very valuable data, and they're going to use that to market to you. So it's like free Credit Karma or freecreditreport.com.
Right.
So if you use those apps, they are free. You can get your credit report for free without having to get your information out there. You can go to annualcreditreport.com, which is the site that I recommend. That's the site sanctioned by the government. You go to annualcreditreport.com, you get your credit report for free. You get it one report from each of the bureaus once a year, so you can get up to three a year. If you go to Credit Karma, you can get your score too, but it's not really your FICO score. But it's a score, it'll give you an idea. But that is really valuable information that they're now going to turn around and start marketing to you. So if you use Mint, and let's say you have a Vanguard account, you have a lot of money going to your Vanguard account, you're going to start seeing a lot of advertising in your email for different financial planners and such. If you're spending a lot of money on credit cards, you're probably going to start seeing a lot of ads for credit counseling. And so my recommendation is if you get it, pay for it.
So which one would you?
Mint is good, but pay for it.
Pay for one.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Get the premier version so that, and then opt out of all marketing. Yes.
And I think in our recent magazine that's going to hit is a whole section devoted to apps, right?
So I just.
If you're in the branch or online, you can download the magazine, and there's a whole. I think it's towards the back on various apps that are friendly and approved.
If you are a spreadsheet fanatic, I love spreadsheets. I know with our online banking, and I believe there are other, depending on who you're with, a lot of times you can upload the information to QuickBooks, or you can upload it to a spreadsheet. So they will literally take all the information that's on your statement, on your electronic statements, and you can just have that imported, and then you can run your own little charts and things like that. I know we have it.
Right.
We have it with QuickBooks, and it's free. You can just upload it.
Which magazine were you talking
So
about?
it's our magazine. If you go to fmfcu.org and
Yeah.
type in magazine, you can go in and download a copy of our magazine. It comes out twice a year.
Choices, yeah.
Thank you.
Choices, like-
So is QuickBooks an alternative to Mint?
No,
QuickBooks is a spreadsheet.
QuickBooks is like a
I think
A bookkeeping.
but
I used to use it. I was a bookkeeper for my husband's company for a little while. It's a bookkeeping software, but it's basically spreadsheet based. So if you're comfortable with spreadsheets, it's not that difficult. You can take the information and you can import it to a spreadsheet, and you can see your spending trends. You can make charts and see what you've been doing. It's very nice.
You should try the 52-week challenge if you're afraid of saving.
Oh yeah, the 52-week
That-
challenge is fun.
That's
We
easy.
do that with like a lot of high school kids too. So January 1st, you save $1. January 2nd, you save $2. You save for every day of the year until,
Every week.
every week. Yes. sorry.
So you do it in reverse. So if you do your 52 weeks first, so your first week in January is 52, then 51, and then you just go down, and I think you wind up with $1,397 by the end of the year. So,
Yeah.
but it's
That's right.
it's painless savings, and it gets you into a habit,
Yeah.
which then leads to other habits. So
And I do think it is easier to do it backwards, to start with the $52.
get the hard part out of the way.
Yeah.
Because then you're into Christmas, if you.
And I'm just, that's why I automate it. Like as soon as the holidays are over, I just have that money going right into my holiday savings account again. It's just so much easier for me. Out of sight, out of mind. It's just like saving for retirement.
And if you do bank with us, you can label your shares a specific name. So you can go online and call it whatever, car fund, things like
Yeah,
that.
I have my cleaners, swim, cell phone fund, because I know that's where all the money for all the bills that I have to pay, they all go into that one account, and everything is itemized as it sweeps. I have to. If I have to be overly organized. It just works for me. So, yes.
So I use this app called Capital, and it's a savings app. So basically, every time I buy a coffee, it rounds it up and puts
Change. the
yeah,
difference.
exactly,
Yeah.
into a savings. And I would do you know anything about security? I mean, I've looked it up and it seems okay, but
Yeah, you have to see how it's insured.
Money, I don't know.
You have to see how it's insured, and you also have to see. I see what you mean about. So they're getting access to your bank account now.
Yeah.
And you have concerns about that. I don't know anything. I've heard of a lot of banks that do that automatically. I've never heard of an outside app. But I've seen on advertising and things like that. The funny thing is that's how I used to balance my checkbook. I just round everything up, and then it'd be like, oh, I still have money in my checking account.
That's similar to Acorns, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, just if you spend $150, it'll get the 50 cents
Yeah, exactly.
out of your account, it'll go to another
And it,
account and invest it. Yeah.
So where is the money being held? The money that you round up?
It's like a virtual bank account.
And
So it's with capital.
So Capital One? Or-
No,
Okay,
it's like capital spells the Q.
Okay.
It's like QA.
You just want to make sure what it said, it's
Yeah.
insurance.
make sure that, monitor that very closely to make sure
Yeah.
that nothing leaks out. Through whoever you're doing your online banking with, if you have fraud, there are steps that you would have to go through, but you should be protected.
I did. It wasn't related to this.
Okay.
It was like my bank, so it made me all nervous. Everything.
But the
I
other
mean,
thing-
I've researched it. It seems okay, but I just didn't know if you've ever.
Are they insured? That would be one thing that I would be curious
Yeah,
about.
they
They're FDIC. They're
Yeah.
probably FDIC insured.
Yeah, there.
Thank you.
And you're probably fine.
Yeah.
But just keep an eye on it.
Mhm.
I'm just curious how long you've been doing it.
Like a year.
And has it worked?
Yep.
That's
It's
I was
great.
gonna say, how much have you saved?
Well, I have like 1,600 in that account.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a great emergency fund.
Yeah, so I just and you can do different ones. So it's like I have a travel one, like a car down payment. For the
And it's an
really
app,
need.
so I'm gonna ask you to.
Yeah, it's like capitals, but instead of C, it's QACI.
I'm gonna have to do some
Yeah,
research on this because
Yeah,
I love to be able to recommend stuff. Like I like Mint. Mint's
Yeah.
a really nice tool because it does bring in all of your accounts. I love the fact that you can calculate your net worth.
Mm-hmm.
You can have your mortgage company in there. It's like, okay, here's the value of my house and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's big. That's really nice with the big picture. But that's wonderful. That is mindlessness in a good way.
Yeah.
Like seriously.
Yeah.
And this is a lot of times when I talk about overcoming debt, we talk about the more things you can automate to your benefit, the better it is. The more savings that you can automate, the more paying of debt that you can be aware of. Say, okay, I'm going to put together a plan and I'm going to pay this biweekly instead of weekly. One of my coworkers just chopped several years off her mortgage because we talked about paying things biweekly or biweekly as opposed to monthly. And she went to her mortgage company and said, hey, can I automate this? They're like, yeah, sure, there's no prepayment penalty. And she cut several years off of her mortgage payment just by doing that. And as far as her budget is concerned, like I do my budget with every paycheck. I don't look at the whole month. I say, from each paycheck, I need to spend this much money, save this much money, etc. So since I function that way, it works well for me. If you're really kind of operating in a month cycle, then you might need those 3 paycheck months as opposed to, just 3 monthly. So. Oh, there you go. So
It's really kind of one of these for us.
exactly. And that, that's such a big challenge too, because you really need to be focused on
So it's
that.
like, can you do a presentation on monthly?
Yeah. I mean, all kidding aside, that
Right.
makes the power of budgeting even more important because you've got to wait 30 days. I mean, you have an issue and you've got, you could be 14 days into the month and living off the credit cards for the rest of the month.
Can't be afraid of money. That is the key. You have to address your feelings, your emotions, your concerns, wants, your needs. If you don't address it, it just becomes a cycle of behavior.
It never ceases to surprise me how much emotion is tied up with money. How much power and comfort and it all ties back into money. And I was older when I got married. I was 35 when I got married. I'd already owned my own home, did all my own things. And coming into a household now where I'd have to make compromises and I'd have to talk about money and I have to deal with that, like sharing bank accounts, that was very weird for me. We still keep things pretty separate. Like we're on each other's accounts, but I have bills that I pay, he has bills that he pays, because I don't ever, it's just, money is very, it's power for me. And I don't ever like to answer to anybody. So I do my thing, he does his thing. We talk about it on a regular basis. We know we don't have debt, but if I want to go out and buy something, I don't have to ask him for the debit card or the checkbook. Actually, he has to ask me for the checkbook because I don't have checkbooks. But whatever works for you. I mean, we all have our issues with money. It's a matter of working within your means, not running up too much debt, and knowing where your money's going.
Well, thank you so much. This was really wonderful. Thank you so much.